Hey y'all, and welcome to Politibrawl. My name is Brian, and this woman was about to have a near panic attack at this Trump town hall. And how Trump handles this isn't just textbook, it's also unusually wholesome.
I'm a single mom to two kids here. And just in 3.5 years, my child tax credit has decreased by 80%, almost.
Get what? Excuse me?
Her child tax credit has
Okay.
decreased by 80%.
That's
Sorry, my child tax credit
Right.
has decreased by almost
Right.
80%. Daycare, for the lowest amount, is roughly $1,400 a month for one child here.
yeah.
Last year, I broke my neck. I almost lost.
You have a beautiful voice, by the way.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
I'm having a panic attack right now. Like,
Don't panic. I'm right here with you.
But last year I had broken my neck and I tried applying for any kind of assistance and was denied because I did not make less than $700 a month. And I'm shaking like a freaking leaf. I cannot stop. So I could not afford daycare. I obviously was having to go through physical therapy and a lot of issues, and I'm still having issues to this day.
Right, I understand.
But what kind of realistic changes that do you think you can provide single parents, married parents, any kind of parent to just simply afford children in today's world with the
And
way
it's not
things
fair,
are?
right? It is not fair.
No.
You never heard of Ivanka, right? Ivanka. My daughter drove me crazy on this. We had the simplest, most beautiful I gave you the largest tax cuts in the history of our country, okay? Larger than the Reagan cuts, larger. But my daughter, Ivanka, she said, Dad, we have to do tax credits for women, for the child tax credits. She was driving me crazy. Then I did it, and I got it just about done. Dad, you've got to double it up. I said, Ivanka, it was actually more complicated than the entire bill, but I got it done. And what we're going to do, and I'm going to because I understand exactly what you're saying, we're going to readjust things so that it's fair to everybody, because it's really not fair to everybody. But we have a lot. And we're going up higher, but we're also going to readjust because you have to make some readjustments. It's unfair to some people, and we're not going to have that. But she was the one that got it started. Those were our credits. Those were not the Democrat credits. A lot of Republicans said, rightfully, don't do it because we never get credit for that. We're not known for that. But the truth is, I wanted to put it all in the form of the tax cut. So I got the maximum tax cut, but we're also bringing down the taxes for companies and for people. We're bringing it down to 15%. And for companies, only if you make your product, build your product in the USA. Otherwise, you don't get it. So
On one hand, that is a great answer, but I wish he had gone a little bit in depth. So I'm going to explain what Trump wasn't able to right there. And first off, by the way, big shout out to Cumming, Georgia. No, get your mind out of the gutter. That's an actual town name, and that's where this town hall was held. And these people were fairly sympathetic to Trump, and it was not a hostile crowd, which is unusual when it comes to the way the media wants to portray women and their support for Trump. So why does Trump not fully answer this question? Well, when the Paul Ryan and Trump tax cuts, because they fought tooth and nail to make this happen, and that was sort of the deal that he made with Paul Ryan. With Paul Ryan, Donald Trump said, listen, here's the deal. What things do you want me to pass? If you got some pet projects, I'll work with you. Paul Ryan wanted to recreate the Bush tax cuts and then add even more things to it. And they worked beautifully. Unfortunately, this wasn't the Bush tax cuts, and this isn't your father's Democrat Party. So when the Democrats took control after 2020, instead of extending those tax cuts like they did the Bush tax cuts, Obama was smart enough to do that because Obama also made a deal with Paul Ryan basically saying that, look, I'll keep the tax cuts. You're going to have to do a few things that I want. It's the same sort of poison pill that the Democrats made with George Herbert Walker Bush that doomed his presidency. Because remember, Bush the elder said, read my lips, no new taxes. Well, the Democrats said, hey, if you raise taxes, we'll give you X, Y, and Z. Well, they gave him X, Y, and Z, but he lost the next election because he left a bad taste in America's mouth because he raised taxes after promising not to. So that's some background history. That's sort of the political reasons why the Republicans didn't want to do this. The Democrats definitely didn't want to do this. It's ultimately they don't want the other side getting any credit. But Trump doesn't operate like that, and definitely doesn't operate like that anymore. So This is what I wish he would have said to this woman, because this woman has a very legitimate problem and is something that's been a widespread issue across the United States. When you're a single mother who now needs to raise her kids outside of a traditional marriage system, something I have a huge amount of sympathy for, despite me being adjacent to the manosphere, at least at one point, that's something that does touch me. That's something that makes me very sympathetic to their cause. And so one of the best things you can do is increase the amount of the child tax credit and have a special credit for single mothers. But that's a topic that I'm still working on. But I wish Trump had said something along those lines. But I wish he also would have said this. The Democrats refused to move forward on our tax cuts. I worked to give us some of the best tax cuts in history. I would do his normal voice, but this is what I'd say if I was him. If I was Trump, I'd say, listen, we had some of the best tax cuts in history. Our economy was booming. Then, when the Democrats got into power, they refused to keep those tax cuts. As a matter of fact, they just let them end. And that's why your taxes have increased and your child tax credit has decreased, because the Democrats have been working on their plans. They would rather give your money to Ukraine. They would rather give your money to Israel. They would rather give your money to foreign aid. And now they're trying to make everything worse by giving Ukraine long-distance weapons to make sure that even more of your tax dollars goes overseas. It's an insane idea, and we need to start talking about increasing these tax cuts, which have now expired because the Democrats have refused to move forward with it. There's no way we could get around Joe Biden's veto. That's not going to happen under my administration. That's what I would say if I was Trump, because that assuages this woman's fears. And by the way, we need to pivot, and I'll end with this little pivot. This woman admits that she's having a near panic attack because asking a question in front of a microphone, in front of a live audience, in front of cameras, and in front of a presidential candidate, naturally most people would be shaking. Now, I kind of love that kind of spotlight, and that's why they think I'm good enough to come in front of a camera and spew my terrible ideas out all over the internet. But this woman is legitimately afraid, and she's afraid for her family. She's afraid of asking the question. Most people's fear is public speaking. That's like the number one fear in America. And so I understand where she's coming from. And then I also understand the fears that she has with her own family. Daycare is through the roof. And you know what? I kind of lied. There's one more pivot I need to go off on, and I wish I had this book with me. There was a book that I read in college that was written back in the 80s by a Democrat, no less. And the book was called Money and Good Intentions Are Not Enough. And it was basically this admission that the Great Society and the American welfare system was doomed to fail because we don't have a compact society. Our society's spread out. We're still fairly rural and suburban. And even our urban areas are car dependent. Now, this would have worked if you had tight-knit family structures. We have seen over the past 40 years the nuclear family almost disintegrate. Now nuclear families are the exception, not the rule. Granted, you still have people that have divorced and found better marriages, but having someone be married to the same partner for the majority of their lives is becoming rarer and rarer and rarer, and that means it's almost impossible to accumulate family wealth over the years. The best way to do that is to own your own home and or the property on which it sits. That's how you pass down wealth to your children. And when there's divorces, when there's single motherhood, when there's deadbeat fathers, when there's people who don't know really what they're doing and they rush into something early and create an absolute mess, you can't keep that wealth in the family anymore. So we've got to start rewiring ourselves. This is something that a government can't do. This is something that you and I have to figure out collectively. We need to start understanding what it's going to take to get people to literally rewire themselves. And you know, I mentioned the manosphere earlier. We always joke that it's a woman problem. No. We have a raising men problem in this country. And so I want to end with this. If you raise men properly, it's going to be easier to create the nuclear family. It's going to be easier to create compact families. Our education system does not like masculinity, particularly at a young age. And so we have stopped teaching young men how to become men. Once we mend that, then we can start looking on the other cross side of the aisle and start talking about the women question. But we have got to start changing our education system. We've got to start changing our tax code. We've got to make it easier for people like this single mother to be in a better household, so it's easier to have childcare for your kids instead of relying on Primrose and whatever other Montessori style schools for your child's daycare. We need to start talking about how it's going to be easier for a family unit to work so we can eliminate those costs for society and for individuals like this single mother. We need to protect our people. Our widows, our orphans, single mothers fall into that category. We've got to be talking about this. And at least Trump is willing to assuage some of her fears and does start complimenting her. He's obviously trying to hype her up and remind her that, hey, this is a safe environment. Please ask your question. I would love to answer it. That's exactly how you're supposed to handle yourself in this situation. So again, we've got to change education. We've got to change our tax laws. We've got to make sure that people like this woman, like this single mother, are well and properly protected and provided for, because that's what a good society is supposed to do. But we can't do this until we start making men great again, and that will require a whole lot of elbow grease. But I'm here and looking forward to the challenge. Folks, my name is Brian. Hope you enjoyed that segment here on Politburo. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Catch you on the next one. And until then, y'all have a good one.